Hello everyone, this is Dan from USMNT Football here. Today we'll be previewing the Gold Cup final between the United States and Mexico, set to take place this Sunday at the NRG Stadium in Houston, Texas. So going into this game, Mexico and the US are both undefeated in the competition. However, I don't think that says too much about the actual run of form of both these teams, with both of their hiccups actually coming against Costa Rica, where, to be honest, the US could have done a little bit better, had to take it to a penalty shootout, and with Mexico, if we're being honest, kind of got screwed over by the ref, and that last Santi Jimenez goal should have stood, and I feel kind of bad for the kid taking away his moment. So if you ask me, Mexico has the slight advantage in terms of form and confidence, but as we all know, in big finals like this, derbies like this, that all goes out the window, tactics be gone. Although they're important, at the end of the day, it's about what team is up for it more and who wants to win on the big night. Another big factor for Mexico is their coach Javier Aguirre, who has experience in these Gold Cup finals, having already won one with his previous tenure with Mexico back in 2009. And they smashed the US 5-0 in that final. However, if you've been following Mexico recently, they are a far cry, at least this current team, from that team almost 2 decades ago, decade and a half later. So the biggest threat for sure has to be Raul Jimenez. Him and Malik Tillman are probably going to be the most talented players on that field. But with Raul, you have to give him that edge, being the talisman, having been there already before. And at least for me, competing in the Premier League, maybe he's not in the best form of his life, but he's been on a solid roll really since the beginning of the year with Fulham and Mexico. And I wouldn't be surprised if he at least gets on the score sheet once. So let's get into some predicted lineups. I expect the US to feature with the familiar back line, Matt Freese, Max Arfsted, Alex Freeman, with Tim Ream and Chris Richards partnering each of them in the center of defense. In the midfield, I expect Poch to start Tyler Adams and Luca de la Torre in that double pivot. However, I could also see Berhalter or Jack McGlynn partnering Adams should Poch want something a bit more offensive, better in transition with one of those two guys. Tillman and Diego Luna are guaranteed starters, no ifs, ands, or buts. And to a lesser extent, probably Patrick Agyemang. Like we've talked about before, not so much about his quality per se, but rather being a big body against those Mexican defenders, which can be pretty useful in my opinion, because if not ruffling them up to maybe get a card over, which I guarantee you there's going to be cards flying in this game, he can just create a space. He's a very smart player in terms of that, so Mexico better keep an eye on him. Which just leaves the right wing position, which I can see Berhalter or Brendan Aronson starting, but I've noticed that even with Poch, Aronson seems to be favored off the bench as like an impact sub for his pace, so I'm probably going to go with Berhalter. Now switching over to Mexico, Luis Malagon is for sure going to be starting Sari Ochoa. Jesus Gallardo is back from suspension, so he should feature. If I'm going to be honest, I'm not a big fan of him. Mini rant, there's just a lot of favoritism in the Mexican national team. Any follower of them is well aware of that. And for me, that guy is very average for the amount of game time he's been given. And we've seen that before with players like Chaca Rodriguez, Charlie Rodriguez, and now we're seeing it with Jesus Gallardo. But anyway, him and Julian Araujo should make up the fullbacks, with Cesar Montes and Johan Vazquez finishing up that back line. Edson, as well as Raul Jimenez, are going to be the first two names on this team sheet. So Edson's going to be in the middle of that probably 3-man midfield. And I believe he's going to be partnered by Eric Lira and Marcel Ruiz. I don't expect Gilberto Morra to start in this one just because it is such a big night for such a young kid. However, if he gets on the field, just expect the announcers to just be glazing him for Yamal comparisons. Him and Kevin Sullivan, I mean, they just age glaze these guys like crazy. I think they should have better things to talk about, but that's just my opinion. Next up, of course, Raul Jimenez. He's going to be up there, of course. And another guaranteed starter is actually Alexis Vegas, who has had a bit of a renaissance since leaving Chivas. And I mean, that's a lot of players, to be honest. They're kind of like the Manchester United of Mexico. And finding a lot more success with his move over to Toluca. And over on the right wing, I expect Roberto Alvarado. Maybe Chino Huerta starts, but Javier Aguirre seems to prefer Orbelin Pineda or Alvarado, so I expect one of them two to start. And Santi Jimenez for sure is going to come off the bench. If not to make a two-man striker partnership with Raul, if Mexico isn't in the lead, then definitely just to maybe help Raul defensively. If Mexico is leading, having Santi there to just chase the ball around. So I expect Santi Jimenez and Chino Huerta to come off the bench as impact subs, similar to Brendan Aronson. So as far as predictions, I'm going to say a 2-2 draw in regular time. It goes to penalties, and Matt Freese bails the U.S. out again to become Gold Cup champions. I don't know why I can see that storyline happening, but I just kind of do. Poch, he actually does fairly well under this kind of pressure when it comes to motivating his players to get them up for a big game. But I'm not sure if that'll translate to American soccer. You know, if they're going to have the same passion and enthusiasm that his other teams have had. You know, if he's had enough time to, you know, get that mentality to seep into his players and for them to really develop a strong following for him. With Javier Aguirre and his following with Mexico, you know, it's a little tricky to gauge that because of all the politics involved. But I think whatever connection Poch has with the national team with the U.S., it's got to be at least as strong with Javier Aguirre with Mexico, if not stronger, because he obviously has been there. And in 2009, it was so long ago that most of the players on this team weren't part of that team, but just the environment around it, he knows how to get these players up for big games. He's gonna know what he's doing. So it's gonna be tricky for both teams involved and super competitive like all these games are. I'm just praying there's minimal violence with all the political stuff going on. I'm not going to get too much into that, but yeah, I hope it's a fun game, hope it's competitive, but we all just respect each other and, you know, don't go too crazy. So 2-2 draw in regular time. Taking it to pens where anything can happen, but I think the U.S. is just going to edge it and keep that hot streak of just, I think it's been, 6 years the last time Mexico beat the U.S.? So they're starting to become big bro here in terms of this competition, because then the U.S. will lose to Canada in the semifinals next year. It's kind of weird, but that's where I'm gonna wrap up the video. I hope you guys liked and enjoyed. Sorry it's so close to the game. I tried to get it out earlier, but 4th of July. Sorry, I wasn't gonna be uploaded on that day. I should have, but it's hard to record with all the fireworks going on. So hope you guys liked and enjoyed. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And I'm out of here. Peace.